The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. This is the Financial Survival Network.
Financial Survival Network is presented to you by Regal Assets. Buy and sell physical gold and silver through your existing retirement plan, 100% tax-free with Regal Assets. If you want to include physical gold or silver in your existing IRA or old 401k, request your free investment kit, which was recently featured in the Forbes and Smart Money Wall Street Journal magazines. Call toll-free 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620, or visit regalassets.com. So the blogosphere, the alternative financial news sites, have been ablaze recently. There were two articles. First, in the Financial Times, where the statement was made that the CFTC, the Commodities Future Trading Commission, was in the process of wrapping up their 4-year investigation of silver markets, and they were basically flushing the charges because, in the words of the Financial Times, there was no evidence of rigging, of manipulation taking place in the market. And this was met by a stern denial from board member Bart Chilton. And Bart Chilton seems to be a guy who really has his heart in the right place. We followed him for a long time. He seems to be the driving force in the silver manipulation investigation by the CFTC. You know, he's a baby boomer. He's about 52 years old. He's been a vocal supporter of position limits in the commodities markets, and he has stated on a number of occasions that he believes there's manipulation going on in the silver market, and there has been. And this reminds us, for those older of you out there, of Casablanca and Rick, and the scene which is oft repeated in the blogosphere, where Rick says, "How can you close me up? On what grounds?" And Captain Renault says, "I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here." And then the croupier hands Renault a pile of money and says, "You're winning, sir." And he says, "Oh, thank you very much." And then everybody out at once. Come on, the commodities markets are built upon manipulation. They were created for that reason. That's their purpose. It's not about price discovery. I'll take it back. Maybe they weren't created for that purpose. The fact is, there's no prohibition against using inside information to trade commodities. So why is that? Certainly, this is a rule that favors the big guys, and I'm kind of against insider trading prohibitions anyway, because there is no way to enforce it. It's impossible. The key is transparency. But they've recognized this in the commodities markets, but still, the big guys get the information before the little guys. This is the way it's always worked. And we need to go back and we need to take a look at exactly what the CFTC is, because my point here is quite simple. If the silver market is truly the tail that wags the dog, and if exposing the silver market manipulation would then make it impossible for the authorities to control the price of gold, and this would lead to the market actually setting the price for silver and gold, which would then bring down the fiat paper stocracy because people would understand how little it's really worth. If you believe that, well, the CFTC is hardly the voice of the people. This was an agency that was created in 1974 to regulate mostly agricultural commodities. It's grown into this colossus that now regulates derivatives, it regulates options and futures and all sorts of things that it was never intended to regulate. And one has to question, why does this thing exist anyway? Why is it here? Because all of these things that we're talking about are securities. So why isn't the SEC regulating that stuff? And the answer, in my opinion, is quite simple. The CFTC was created to water down the authority of the SEC, because who are the companies that trade in the commodities markets. They're the same companies that trade in the stock markets. They're the biggest financial entities in the world. So we give them the CFTC, which is a little jerkwater, bureaucratic backwater. The CFTC is just a bureaucratic backwater that nobody cared about until the latest crash. And as they say, they have an evolving mission. Well, their mission is to provide the SEC cover. Not that I think the SEC does anything worthwhile either, other than forcing full and complete disclosure, which even there you have to wonder about, because the disclosure that comes out is often transparent, but it's often meaningless. But you have to look at the CFTC. They've got staff. They have a bunch of major units. The Division of Clearing and Intermediary Oversight, that's like they're supposed to be watching MF Global. Well, they did a lot of good there, and they were supposed to be watching Corzine, and they didn't do much good there either. I guess that ties in with the Division of Market Oversight, and then they have a Division of Enforcement. Well, I don't see them enforcing anything against John F. Corzine. I don't see them enforcing anything against Corzine. Do you? So this agency, well, it appears to perhaps have some more power than it did prior to Dodd-Frank, is pretty much a toothless tiger, and it just accomplishes absolutely nothing. Look, they've spent 4 years on this Silver investigation. Now, I've been involved in investigations before. I've done discovery. All they have to do is go subpoena the records of every single time that job numbers were released and the silver and gold markets were driven lower. See who was selling the position short. It's the same people. It's the same cast of characters. They're not going to do anything because, look, if this thing is really being controlled by the government, which I have my beliefs about, but if it is, in fact, the scheme is being controlled by the government and the Fed, and there's really not much difference between the two, is this little backwater agency going to take on the Treasury? Are they going to take on the Bernanke? It's never going to happen. The other thing is, the report has probably been written in one form or another for years. Nothing's been leaked. Now, Washington, D.C. is a place that prides itself in leaking the most mundane of details. They're constantly talking to reporters. They're constantly letting the proverbial cat out of the bag. And yet this one report, nobody knows what's in it. So this is further proof. This thing's been sealed off. It's going to be a whitewash. Perhaps Bart Chilton, God bless his soul, is going to do a scathing minority report. But in the final analysis, the CFTC exists to protect the industries that it regulates. That's its only or prime purpose, and to provide you with the illusion that they're looking out for you. And the fact is, they're not looking out for you. They're not after Corzine. They're doing nothing to see that MF Global and Corzine doesn't get repeated over and over again. This agency is pointless. It should be merged into the SEC. It should go out of business. Let the SEC run it all. I don't think the SEC is going to do it any better, but at least with the SEC, you know they exist to protect the financial markets and the dominant forces in those markets. There's no pretense at being there to help the little guy, being there to protect the individual investor. You know what you have with the SEC. With the CFTC, any investigation they do is bogus. They can't even define the term swap, okay? Swap, man, they can go to Wikipedia, they can go to the dictionary. Within 15 minutes, they can have a definition. And the other thing that's happened here, and I wanted to make this really clear, is that since 1991, the CFTC has given secret exemptions from hedging regulations to 19 major banks and participants, allowing them to accumulate essentially unlimited positions. They didn't need Dodd-Frank to cut down on positions, to impose position limits, and these exemptions were given in secret. They only came to light in 2008. in the financial crisis when Congress finally woke up and said, oh, we have this regulator and they don't look like they're doing their job. And these exemptions should not exist. It's just another example of fascism, crony capitalism, which I've said in the past is not capitalism. It's simply putting a pretty face on fascism. This is what it's all about. And forget about finding justice in Washington. As a wise man once said, the judicial system and justice are distant cousins at best. Justice and regulatory democracy, they're not even in the same courtroom. They're not related. Their function is not to mete out justice. It's to protect the industry that they're regulating, protect them from competition, protect them from their customers whom they have been ripping off for decades. So the next time you think that the government or a portion of the government is looking out for you and they're going to come to the rescue and see to it that justice is done and that the silver manipulation ring, which has been going on for decades, is going to be exposed, think again. It ain't going to happen, not in this life or the next. Your only protection is to buy gold and silver, to opt out of the system the best you possibly can, and to let the thing blow up and then watch the purification, which will hopefully occur. There's nothing else you can do. Don't even pay attention to this noise over the CFTC. 4 years. How long does it take? Realistically, they could have established this within 2 days and brought charges. They're not going to. That's it. Forget about it.